Okay, the reading for this week is the next part of our series on Chinese civilization, culture, philosophy, and this is the third worksheet that we will have on the Xunzi. So this is the third part. It's a discussion of the rites, the Li, selection from the Xunzi, discussion of the rites. If you haven't watched the first two videos on Xunzi, go ahead and watch those before you watch this. And Xunzi, of course, is the most famous for his doctrine of the badness or the evil of humanity. Right? Famously, he said, "Xing humans are evil," and we discussed that in the last episode. Okay, today this will be about the rites. And Xunzi, just a review, born in 310 BC, died in 219 BC, lived at the very end of the Zhou Dynasty, so the chaotic years of the end of the Zhou Dynasty, the warring states. Like Mencius, he was an advocate and interpreter of the teachings of Confucius, and he lived a generation after Mencius. So just to review, we have Confucius, Kongzi, and then 100 years later we have Mencius come along and interpret Confucius for his generation, and then the next generation we have Xunzi. So living a generation after Mencius, Xunzi lived through the final brutal wars which ended with the state of Qing absorbing and unifying all the Chinese feudal states. So you remember that there are 7 or so warring states, and the underdog, the Qing state, ended up emerging victorious and gobbling up all the other states and unifying China in the Qing dynasty, under the Qing emperor, and the short-lived Qing dynasty emerges from that. And the word China, of course, in English comes from this Qing, as I mentioned in the other videos. Xunzi was a widely traveled scholar, teacher, and official. Okay, so here we have selections from the Xunzi again, the passage about the discussion of rites. Before I read the passage, let's look at the 4 study questions, and we'll go over these in class. How does this passage compare? And this passage refers to the section that begins, what is the origin of Li, rites? So referring to that passage, how does this passage compare to the passage that illustrates Xunzi's outlook on human nature, which we did in the last reading, where he says human nature is bad. His do the thoughts expressed here confirm or complicate the impressions that you might receive from Xunzi's comments to the effect that human nature is evil? 人心之恶. Okay, the thoughts here confirm or complicate the impressions from his human nature is evil doctrine. Question number 2. How does Xunzi think of human desires? Why? So he touched upon human desires in the human nature is evil passage, and he discusses that here too. What does he think of human desires? Why? How does his thinking compare with that of Confucius? With the thinking of other world religions and or philosophies, how does it compare? Okay, so we'll compare his idea of human desires with, say, Buddhism. Desire, of course, is central in Buddhism. Desire is the cause of human suffering in Buddhism. How does the Buddhist conception of desire differ with his conception put forth here? Question number 3. In what way does Xunzi's understanding of the rites of the Li confirm or differ from the understanding that you see in Confucius's Lung Yu, or the Analects? Okay, how is Xunzi's Li different from Confucius's Li, or rites, propriety, ritual, etc.? And question number 4, what are the respective roles and natures of rulers and common folk as seen in this passage? And question 5, there's one more. Compare Xunzi's account of the origin and purposes of rites with accounts of the origin and purposes of law in ancient Middle Eastern societies. What similarities do you see there? We don't need to get into Middle Eastern societies for this class, so we can skip to question number 5. But we will need to discuss his account of the origin and purposes of rites. Right. Okay, here's the selection, and once again, it's taken from Sources of Chinese Tradition, 1999. I'll put the link to that book in the description below, so you can purchase it and read along. Okay, selection from the Xunzi, a discussion of rites. What is the origin of Li, rites? I reply, human beings are born with desires, underlying desires, we'll go over the kanji is yoku, right, in Japanese. I forget the Chinese pronunciation, but it's a very important term, concept in this passage, so underline it, we'll go over it later. I reply, human beings are born with desires, and when they do not achieve their desires, they cannot but seek the means to do so. If their seeking knows no limit or degree, they cannot but contend with one another. With contention, so he talks about this in the passage that we read in the last reading too, this contentiousness that comes from human desire. With contention comes chaos, and with chaos comes exhaustion. The ancient kings, so these are the ancient kings that Confucius constantly refers to, the ancient sage kings who should be models for the present era as well. The ancient kings hated chaos and therefore established Li, rites, and rightness, Yi, in order to limit it, to nurture people's desires, and to give them a means of satisfaction. They saw to it that desires did not exhaust material things, and that material things did not fall short of desires. Thus both desires and things were supported and satisfied, and this was the origin of Li, rites. Li, rites, have three roots. Heaven and earth, Tian Di, are the root of life. The ancestors are the root of human species, and rulers and teachers are the root of order. So once again, this tree metaphor that we see a lot in Confucian philosophy, right? Heaven and earth are the root of life. The ancestors are the root of the human species, this tree, so there are three trees, and rulers and teachers are the root of the tree of order. If there were no heaven and earth, no tian de, how could there be life? If there were no ancestors, the root of ancestors, how could there be begetting? If there were no rulers and teachers, how could there be order? So the tree of order requires the root of rulers and teachers. If even one of these were lacking, human beings would have no peace. Thus rites, Li, serve heaven above and earth below. They honor ancestors, they exalt rulers and teachers. They are the three roots of rites. These are the three roots of rites. Next paragraph. Rites, Li, always begin in coarseness, are completed in forms, and end in joy. So this is the teleology of all rites. Thus, in their most perfect state, both emotion and the forms are fully realized. In the next state, emotions and forms prevail by turns. And in the lowest state, everything returns to emotion and reverts to a great unity. And I think this is a quote from the Odes, possibly. We'll look at that later. Heaven and earth find harmony. The sun and moon become bright. The four seasons follow in order. The stars and constellations move. The rivers and streams flow, and all things flourish. Likes and dislikes are regulated. Joys and hates are made appropriate. Continuing, those below are, the next paragraph, those below are compliant. Those above are enlightened. The myriad things change but do not become chaotic. One who turns his back upon Li, upon rites, will be lost. Are rites not perfect? When they have been properly established and brought to the ultimate point, no one in the world can add to or subtract from them. Root and branch are put in proper order. Beginning and end are correlated. Distinctions are expressed through the most elegant forms. Explanations derive from the utmost discernment. Those in the world who follow the Li, the rites, will be orderly. Those who do not follow the rites, the Li, will be chaotic. Those who follow them will be at peace. Those who do not follow them will be in danger. Those who follow them will be preserved. Those who turn against them will perish. This is something that the lesser person cannot comprehend. The lesser person is the Xiaorang, in contradistinction to the Xunzi. The principle of the rites, the Li, is truly deep. Discriminations of hard and white, same and different, enter there and drown. The principle of the rites is discriminations of hard and white, same and different, enter the rites and drown. So all discriminations drown in these rites. The principle of the rites is truly great. Crass and vulgar theories on wielding authority and exerting control enter there and perish. Okay, he might be referring to Han Feize. Han Feize comes after him, never mind. The principle of the rites is truly lofty. Contumelious, arrogance, contumelious. Forget how to pronounce this word. Contumelious, arrogance, haughty disdain, and the contempt for common customs that presumes one's own superiority to ordinary people enter there and are brought low. So arrogance is brought low in these, in the principle of rites. Next paragraph. Rites are most strict in the ordering of birth and death. Birth is the beginning of a human being. Death is the end. When both beginning and end are good, the human way, the Tao, the Ren Tao, is complete. Therefore, the noble person, the Xunzi, is reverential toward the beginning and watchful over the end, so that the beginning and end are as one. This is the way of the Xunzi, the noble person. This is the refinement of Li, rights, and rightness, Yi. To be generous in the treatment of the living, but miserly in the treatment of the dead, is to show reverence for a being who has consciousness and contempt for one who lacks consciousness. This is the way of an Ren, an evil person, and an offense against the Qing, the heart, the mind. The noble person, the Xunzi, would be ashamed to treat a bondservant in a way that offends the Qing, the heart. How much more ashamed would he be to treat those whom he honors and loves in such a way? Because the rites of the dead can be performed only once for each individual and never again, they provide the final occasion at which the subject may express the utmost respect for the ruler, and the son may express the utmost respect for his parents. Therefore, to serve the living without loyalty and generosity and without reverence and good form is called rudeness, and to send off the dead without loyalty and generosity or without reverence and good form is called miserliness. The noble person, the Xunzi, disdains rudeness and is ashamed of miserliness. Rites contract, next paragraph, rites contract what is too long and expand what is too short, reducing excesses and repairing deficiencies, pervading the forms of love and reverence, and enlivening the beauties of right conduct. Therefore, while refined beauty and coarse ugliness, joyful music and mournful weeping, calm contentment and anxious grief are opposites, rites bring them together and make use of them, eliciting and employing each in due course. So all opposites, yin and yang and so forth, are brought together in rites, and everything is unified into a harmony. Therefore, refined beauty, joyful music, and calm contentment serve to induce an attitude of tranquility and are employed on auspicious occasions. Coarse ugliness, mournful weeping, and anxious grief induce an attitude of inquietude and are employed on inauspicious occasions. Therefore, when refined beauty is utilized, it should never reach the point of shallowness or sensuality. And when coarse ugliness is utilized, it should never lead to the point of starvation or self-abandonment. When joyful music and calm contentment are utilized, they should never lead to profligacy or indolence. And though mournful weeping and anxious grief are utilized, they should never lead to faint-heartedness or injury to life. If this is done, then rites Li will achieve the middle state, the Zhong, right? The doctrine of the mean, the Zhong. We've talked about that, which is one of the sections of the Li Jing. Next paragraph. It is always true that rites Li, when they serve the living, are an adornment to joy, le, right? 快乐的乐, joy, happiness, 楽 in Japanese. And when they serve the dead, an adornment to grief. In sacrifices, they are an adornment to reverence, and in military affairs, an adornment to authority. This was the same for the rites of the 100 kings. It is what unites antiquity and the present. The rites unite the antiquity and the present. The source for this we do not know. And the final paragraph. Sacrificial rites give expression to the feelings of remembrance and longing for the dead. So he's referring to the sacrifices that are given to the dead after someone has died, to ancestors and so forth. There inevitably come times when one is overwhelmed by emotions of grief and loss, and a loyal minister or a filial son finds that even while others are given to the enjoyment of congenial company, these sorrowful emotions arise.